Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Hardware Podcast. My name's Jackson Danner alongside my good friend Omar Borja. Omar, we are finally doing a preview for like a real college football week. It's awesome. No all-star game, no National Football League draft preview. I mean, we're doing no interview. We're doing like real stuff here. This is what it's all about, right? We're doing our week 0 preview today. If you don't already know, week 0 is really kind of like the soft opening to the college football season, right? All these games primarily, or not all of them, but the vast majority of them are on August 27th, this upcoming Saturday. So, man, I couldn't be more excited. We're wrapping up the preseason in the NFL, and we're getting into the legit college football season and games that matter.
Yeah, I'm so excited too for week 0. What else is there to say? College football's back. Now, it's not like the last offseason where we had the spring FCS, Division II, Division III, NAIA season to tie us over. But it's back, and it felt, it didn't feel that long ago that we were watching, Georgia win their first national title since 1980, and then, just all the other bowl games too. It doesn't seem that far away, honestly. And even the All-Star games too. Like, if you're looking at the last All-Star game of the season, which is the HBCU Legacy Bowl, that was on February 19th this year. You're looking at only 5 months without college football. So, maybe the time keeps feeling quicker and quicker that we don't have football. So
Absolutely. No, it feels like more than 5 months for me since we've watched friend of the show Neil Boudreau in the coin toss, right? But man, it's we're here and it's gonna fly by like that. We're gonna blink and it's gonna be November, I feel like. So obviously no players from the previous week to watch since this is week 0. I don't think next week we're supposed to have players to watch just because a lot of teams that are playing this weekend are not next weekend, but we'll start doing that come week 2. But man, we'll just hop right in. I'll let you go with your first game to watch this week.
yeah, also just a brief note. So we will be taking a break. Well, at least I will be taking a break unless Jackson finds another co-host to do hardware with, as I will be out of commission for weeks 1, 2, and 3, and the lead up to week 3. Paying my dues back to Uncle Sam for a training exercise. But yeah, so I mean, for that reason, we won't have players to watch until about week 4. But when I come back, there'll be excuse me, some heartburn's coming here. But there'll be a recap of the first few weeks of the season and who's on the leading boards of the Heisman and other races too. So
got a pretty emotional there, man.
That was just afternoon church's chicken that was coming up. But,
yeah, man.
But yeah, so okay, so I guess to start things off with my first game, probably the game of the week. I think last year game day was at this game. I was at this game. It was an absolutely electric atmosphere. We have the MEAC SWAC Challenge at 7 Eastern on ESPN, and I mean, shoot, we had a great announcing team. Last year we had Mark Jones and RG3's debut in the booth. RG3 was an amazing color commentator, and then Mark Jones, of course, always one of the more underrated talents on ESPN, calling that game. Just a great atmosphere on TV, a great atmosphere. If you're like me and you're there watching the bands play at Center Park Stadium, watching an upset unfold over in front of your eyes with North Carolina Central defeating the 2018 and 2019 SWAC champions in Alcorn State there in Atlanta, kind of set the tone for the SWAC that year. So this year in the MEAC SWAC Challenge, we got Alabama State versus Howard, the Howard Bison, one of the biggest brands in HBCU football. Alabama State, a school we are both familiar with, especially Jackson, who absolutely loved Ezra Gray's tape, and Ezra Gray, a USFL player for the Breakers this past spring, had a couple carries and a kick return in the semifinal game on Saturday night at NBC. But this game, these two programs struggled a bit. We had Howard went 3-8 last year, but it was a deceptive 3-8 at times. Howard was highly competitive in a bunch of games, including a 3-point loss to South Carolina State, who most of you know of, even if you're a casual college football fan, beat Jackson State and Coach Deion Sanders out in Atlanta in the Celebration Bowl, honestly by a lot, by 3 touchdowns. They only lost to them by 3, or Howard lost to South Carolina State by 3. And they also beat Sacred Heart, the 2021 NEC champs, who we've talked about from time to time on this podcast with Julius Chestnut having such a good year in 2020 in the spring year for as a Walter Payton finalist, making it to the Hula Bowl. They beat that team, Sacred Heart, a playoff team, by 5 points. Alabama State went 5-6 last year, but this team has so much young talent returning. They have, I think, their top 6 receivers from last year returning. They have a good young quarterback in Ryan Nettles, who I think is a sophomore year, but he returns. And then they have their leading rusher, who was not Ezra Gay, surprisingly, but Ja'Cory Merritt, who came up because of Ezra Gray's injury. So this game, I expect it to be close. I expect Alabama State to be favored if lines have come out yet for that game. I expect Alabama State to be favored, but I expect a close competitive game, which brings me into a new partnership we're doing, or it's not so new, but since if you're watching us in the spring, we were doing the HBCU Pigskin Showdown podcast with that All-Star game. So we're going to continue that partnership, and we're going to do each week we do an HBCU Pigskin Player of the Week and a Player to Watch going forward. So my HBCU Pigskin Players of the Week or to watch we have Keaton Isaac, who was on the Shrine Bowl 1000 watch list. The Shrine Bowl released 1,000 players that they're looking for this upcoming season. This is the guy that had 33 tackles, 7 pass breakups last season. So that's my guy for Alabama State to watch. And then for Howard, a guy to watch for that All-Star game is I thought I had it written down here, but luckily Howard made a press release for their guys making the Shrine Bowl 1000. So as I pull that up really quick, it was a lineman that I had in mind, and as I pull it up, sorry, you'll have to excuse us. We're working out the kinks here. We're working out the kinks. But for my guy here, I have Darian Brokenburg, who had a solid year last year. He had 24 tackles, 19 solo, 2.5 sacks, and 3.5 sacks. So Darian Brokenburg out of Howard and Keaton Isaac out of Alabama State. And I guess one more guy to watch, not a senior, but Quinn Williams, quarterback out of Howard. If you're interested in the Walter Payton race, as you should be, out in the FCS, Quinn Williams is a great dual threat quarterback. 2,353 yards passing, 16 touchdowns, third team all MEAC. And if you look at it, it makes sense. It's third best quarterback in the MEAC. I mean, looking at for probably, I guess, Juwan Carter, another solid quarterback out there, and Corey Fields out of South Carolina State, some good quarterbacks out there for him to be third team. And he's not as mobile as other quarterbacks last year, but he has enough mobility. So dark horse contender for the HBCU Player of the Year. Sorry, that was long-winded, but we'll work out the kinks on our delivery.
No, you're good, man. No, those are some great guys to watch. And I mean, there's no excuse this week, right? This is one of the bigger games on the HBCU calendar. It's week 0, which plenty of college football, but still a weaker slate than we typically have. So man, no excuse. Go ahead and put that on. Get a second TV if you need it, in case your team is playing in the same time slot, and we'll definitely be keeping an eye on that. I'll go ahead and go. I'll go with my first game, and it turns out my HBCU Pigskin Showdown player to watch for that week is also in this game, so I'll do the same format you did. FAMU at North Carolina, Florida A&M at North Carolina. Man, Florida A&M is coming off of a 9-3 season last year, so a very successful season, even though they didn't win their conference or anything. I expect them to run the ball a lot with running back by committee. They've got 2 big backs in Terrell Jennings and Jalen McLeod. They're both over 6 foot, both 230 pounds plus. And then they also picked up a transfer from Coastal Carolina, who's obviously had a lot of success the past few years, in Isaiah Connolly. Isaiah is my guy to watch as far as my HBCU picks and showdown player to watch this week. Man, looking at Isaiah's track record, obviously a lot of success coming from Coastal Carolina. Man, he's a former 3-star recruit, so it's not like he wasn't even on the board and then went to Florida A&M. I mean, that's pretty good for an FCS school, right? So 3 stars, and he's averaged about like 5 yards per carry at Coastal Carolina. So, maybe a short distance back, but we'll see. I'm really curious how Florida A&M plans to use him and plans to use all 3 running backs. And now that they're missing, I believe Bishop Bonnet, right? Bishop Bonnet graduated this past year. And so huge gap to fill, and hopefully these guys can these guys can fill it up. But yeah, moving on to the North Carolina side of things, they're coming off of a kind of disappointing 6-7 year. I think the expectation is probably a little bit higher there in North Carolina, especially for the lack of depth that the ACC has. So you can watch that game 8:15 Eastern on the ACC network. I'm not sure if it's like a paycheck game, like if it's officially like a cupcake game, but it's not going to be a cupcake. It's going to be competitive, and I might even favor Florida A&M. So we'll see how that goes. I'm excited for it.
I mean, sure, I wouldn't favor Florida A&M, but I think it will be more competitive than people think. But yeah, it is a paycheck game. I think the next few years, North Carolina will be scheduling a couple of HBCUs as a celebration of those programs. But yeah, I mean, it should be exciting having those teams too, especially a program with as rich a tradition as Florida A&M, and it goes beyond the band, goes beyond the Marching 100. Just so much tradition for Florida A&M, so many great players that have passed, passed through those halls, and so many great coaches too, like Jake Pappas and Nate Gaither. So the tradition of Florida A&M is alive and well for sure. So next up for my second game to watch, I have Yukon at Utah State, and this one's a fascinating game for a few reasons too. So I'm going to start off with on the lower end of things with Yukon. This is a Yukon team that returns 15 starters, and we all know the bumps in the road that they went through, including a loss to Holy Cross on Labor Day weekend. To the fighting Matt Slukas out there in Worcester. But they had a loss there. They went 1-11. Their one win was, I think, a 1-score victory over Yale. It was good to see Yale play an FBS school again, an Ivy League school play an FBS school. But UConn really had a tough year, that season. But they get a boost at quarterback. I mean, it seemed to be a revolving door quarterback last year for the Huskies. They get Quan Roberson. He's a Penn State transfer, has game experience for Penn State, and this is an offense that can be more dynamic with Roberson at quarterback because he has more mobility than the quarterbacks they had last year, whether it be Jack Zergiotis, Canadian guy, complicated name there, or Tyler Pomachan. He has more mobility, obviously has that highly touted nature and talent to him. So UConn will be improved this year. On to Utah State. Utah State is fresh off a Mountain West title and a statement-making win over Oregon State in the Jimmy Kimmel LA Bowl. I don't think any team made a bigger statement. I think they're probably a top 5 team in terms of making a statement during bowl season last year, as they had a pretty I wouldn't say dominant, but I mean, they looked great against Oregon State, an Oregon State school that, making their first bowl game in a while, didn't barely get into bowl season. But they looked great against them, beat them 24-13 on primetime on ABC with Joe Tess on the call. I don't think it gets any better in bowl season for a group of 5 team. Interesting quarterback battle here in Utah State, I'm kind of intrigued by what they're doing with their quarterbacks, because they have 3 very capable quarterbacks. Of course, Logan Bonner looks to be the starter this year. Right, he had 3,600 yards last year, 36 touchdowns. They also have Levi Williams, who had 540 non-sack rushing yards for Wyoming and 9 passing touchdowns, and also ran for 200 yards in a very entertaining, famous Idaho Potato Bowl. And I think he's a sophomore this year, if I remember correctly. He's a sophomore this year, so he has a couple years of eligibility. So I pull up my Phil Steele right here. He is a sophomore, yeah. So he has 2 more years of eligibility after the season. And if those 2 guys were not enough, they also have Cooper Lega, who came off the bench in the LA Bowl and threw a touchdown on his first career pass to Devin Tompkins in the LA Bowl, and ended up playing very well in that game. So Utah State has 3 very, very great quarterbacks, or I guess, yeah, very capable quarterbacks. Start off by Logan Bonner, but from an awards perspective too, I mean, Logan Bonner is a guy you should be looking at. I mean, probably a dark horse Heisman candidate, not just because of the team he played on last year, but some of the opportunities he'll get to play in front of national audiences too, like week 0, and the following week they play Alabama. Now, I'm not saying they're going to beat Alabama, but if that's a dangerous game for Alabama, if they if they don't look dominant against Utah State has a chance to kind of be competitive in that game. And if Logan Bonner throws for, about 300 yards or so, keeps it competitive, Logan Bonner's name that probably he's a household name, so that's my guy to watch out for this week. UConn, Utah State, 4 p.m. Eastern time on Fox Sports 1.
Definitely, man. I forgot all about that from the LA Bowl, just coming right off the bench and slinging it.
Oh,
So
also might I add, Jimmy Kimmel LA Bowl or Jimmy Kimmel Show star Logan Bonner. In the Jimmy Kimmel Bowl, in the Jimmy Kimmel Show, they had a bunch of the stars from Oregon State and Utah State come on the stage and tell a joke like they did in the good old days. I hope they do that again. Have the football players come on the stage leading up to that bowl game. So I'll probably show that clip too right about now. Just gonna pause a bit and edit that clip in there. But yeah, so might I add, Jimmy Kimmel show star or comedian or budding comedian Logan Bonner.
Logan Bonner, absolutely, just adding to the resume there for sure. I'll go ahead and go with my second game to watch. If this game was in October, I don't really know if I would pay any attention to it. But Charlotte at Florida Atlantic. Now you may be thinking this was one-sided last year, and it was. It was 38-9 Florida Atlantic victory. But I want to point out a couple things. Charlotte last year opened up really strong and beat a Power 5 team in Duke in last year's season opener. Willie Taggart coach teams are 1-3 in the past 4 season openers. So I'm just pointing that out. Charlotte, at least last year, had a really strong opening. Willie Taggart traditionally not doing so hot in week 0 or week 1. So just point that out. You can watch it 7 o'clock Eastern time on the CBS Sports Network. So who knows, might be entertaining. Not too much college football on at night, particularly for that slate's kind of weak. So excited to see it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the game, like you mentioned, to watch at night is
outside the
challenge.
MEAC SWAC challenge.
Yeah, I'm saying, yeah.
Sorry, I should clarify. There's not a lot of depth to that slate. So
yeah, for sure. I mean, and if you have a second TV setup, this one is one to have because Charlotte looks like a dark horse team out of Conference USA, and FAU does for that matter. You'd be looking at 2 good quarterbacks for both teams. N'Kosi Perry from Miami transfer, if you remember him, the past few years on the struggle Miami offenses, kind of started to come onto his own last year, coming to his own second year in the Florida Atlantic system and Willie Taggart system. I expect him to have a solid year. And then Charlotte has Chris Reynolds, which I got to check if I'm stepping on your toes here, Jackson, but I don't think you had either of those guys listed as players to watch. But yeah, just 2 good quarterbacks too. So good quarterback play should happen in that game. And yeah, that Charlotte game too, that Charlotte Duke game, Charlotte's first ever Power 5 victory. What an electric game that was, honestly. You had even though Mateo Durant ran left, right, middle, diagonal on the Charlotte defense, Charlotte found a way to win that game late, and the students rushed the field. So certainly something to watch out for there. Some good old Conference USA football. I guess before things get kind of wonky with the Conference USA's kind of membership next season, but definitely a great game to watch there. I totally agree, Jackson. So my game here, I kind of forgot that this game was happening this week as I put this shirt on. But we have Wyoming at Illinois at 4 Eastern on the Big Ten Network. And this one, too, if you're our gambling audience, if you're going to pick a game to pick an upset on, I would pick this one, Wyoming at Illinois, because, Wyoming, they have the style of play that's conducive to beating Power 5 teams. If you remember in 2019, Wyoming they ruined Kelly Bryant's Missouri debut out there in Laramie. Sean Chambers ran what's seen for like 1 million yards against that Missouri defense out there in Laramie. This game's not in the high elevation of Laramie. It's at Illinois, but Wyoming went 7-6 last year. They only return 9 starters. They play a Big Ten brand of football though. They average 212 yards per game last season. Craig Bowl, of course, former North Dakota State head coach. They're not afraid to use a fullback. So this is a Big Ten team disguised as a Big Ten team disguised as a Mountain West team. Illinois, on the other hand, went 5-7 last season, but returns 13 starters, including their top 2 leading receivers and rushers. They are projected to finish last in the Big Ten West by Phil Steele, which that surprises me considering that Northwestern's also in that division. So maybe Phil Steele knows something we don't. And again, like this is probably your upset pick for the weekend too, considering these teams. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And anytime that we can see a group of 5 versus Power 5, especially before it gets even more convoluted in the next upcoming few years, is always fun to watch that dynamic. You really only get to see it in bowl season and in week 0 and week 1. You don't really see it outside of that. in the year. So yeah, that's gonna be awesome to watch for sure. I'll go ahead and go with my next game. How can you not watch this if you're a college football fan? Vanderbilt at Hawaii. Vanderbilt is coming under a lot of new branding, getting a new logo, new helmets, all that good stuff. Mike Wright named the starter at SEC Media Day. So more of a dual threat, which is something that Vanderbilt has really always lacked. And Hawaii, new football coach and Timmy Chang, a really homecoming for him. So, man, a new beginning for both of these schools. You can watch it at 10:30 Eastern on the CBS Sports Network. And Life is Good is going to be mid-afternoon in Hawaii, and you can just sit back and fall asleep to it. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one too. If you remember 2 years ago or 3 seasons ago, excuse me, you had the 2019 Arizona Hawaii game, and that game was an amazing Week 0 game. If you came off of watching the Florida Gators beat the Miami Hurricanes out in Orlando with Kirk Herbstreit and Chris Fowler on the call, and you had just a back and forth affair between these two teams, which ended with Khalil Tate being stopped a yard short after scrambling on the final play. Just probably one of the best finishes of any game I've seen in my life. I expect a close game as well, with Hawaii having a new coach, and a lot of players transferred out of Hawaii. They lost, of course, Chevin Cordero to San Jose State, which probably one of the more shocking transfers of the offseason. They lose Nick Mardner. So if you watch the 2019 Hawaii Bowl, you'll remember Jason Benetti, now Fox Sports play-by-play man. Jason Benetti's iconic call. It's Nick Mardner night in Hawaii. It's Nick Mardner night at Aloha Stadium after catching 2 passes in a row to beat Zach Wilson and BYU. So should be a very even game, honestly. You have a very kind of quaint, uptight atmosphere, or up close atmosphere with the game being played at Clarence T.C. Ching Stadium in Hawaii. It's going to be a different environment than Vandy's used to in the SEC. So should be a very unique game, and I'm excited for it too. The nightcap for this week. Going on to my next game, we're going to go back to the FCS level. And I got to ask, what's the start of the college football season without a game at the Crampton Bowl? So we have the FCS kickoff at Jacksonville State and Stephen F. Austin. And this is Jacksonville State for last year in the FCS before they go to Conference USA. I know we mentioned how crazy that conference is going to look next season, with all the realignment happening. But obviously Jacksonville State has a home field advantage in what I believe is their 3rd or 4th appearance in the FCS kickoff. I mean, it's just easy to put an Alabama school in Montgomery, for this game. Stephen F. Austin is a sleeper out of the WAC, and they have some dark horses, or I mean, the way you see, or depends on the way you see it, favorites for the Walter Payton Award, which we'll talk about later. But Stephen F. Austin went 8-4 last year in the South, and they gave up 19 points per game, and that's what teams like Sam Houston State in the conference with them. So this is definitely a game to watch. 3:30 Eastern ESPN. The 3:30 to 10:30 time block is going to be an absolute powerhouse time block for ESPN, as they have back-to-back FCS bashes. Definitely what you should be watching in Week 0. But I mean, again, the FCS kickoff at the historic Crampton Bowl.
Absolutely. I'll always love anytime we can mention the Crampton Bowl, squeeze that in there, especially when there's a game over there. Always love to watch. I'll go with my last. Was that your last game to watch, or do you have another one?
I think I have one more. Let me see.
Okay.
Do I? No, I'm good. I'm good to go.
Okay. I'll go with my last two. Nebraska and Northwestern. Which the reason I'm going with that is because of where the game is. It is going to be in Dublin, Ireland. 12:30 Eastern on Fox. Aviva Stadium is gorgeous, man. Nothing like what we have in college football. It's awesome that they get a chance to play here. Big Ten country. We expanded to California. I guess we're going to Ireland now, so it's nice to see going all over the world, I guess. And with my last game to watch, Omar is going to hate me for this. Rams Bengals on NFL Network at 6 Eastern. The reason I'm going with this, man, is because you want maybe a day 3 pick that you can really keep your eye on, especially if you're a fan of the Los Angeles Rams. Jacoby Durant, man, already 3 interceptions in training camp. Jalen Ramsey just said yesterday that he's way ahead where he was knowledge-wise as a rookie, which I know Jalen Ramsey went to FSU, but that even surprised me, man. So excited to see what Jacoby can do. in the big leagues. And I mean, yeah, it's a Super Bowl rematch and all that, but man, it's going to be awesome to see Durant get a lot of playing time, and hopefully that'll carry into week 1 of the real season.
I mean, I am kind of disappointed, Jackson, but I'll allow it because you're talking about Jacoby Durant, a great player out of HBCU. And if you're an NFL fan, you would know that Buddy Pugh out there in Orangeburg, South Carolina, knows how to develop those players. With what does Darius Leonard want people to call him now? I forget the name. I don't want to call him Darius Leonard.
Ooh, I forgot.
Let me look it up so I call him.
I know what you're talking about though.
But with Shaquille, with Shaquille Leonard, if you probably know him better as Darius Leonard, with his career so far in the NFL as a multiple time Pro Bowler, Buddy Pugh knows how to develop those guys out there. Jacoby Durant just continues that tradition. Went to the Shrine Bowl last year with their great partnership with HBCU. So I'll allow it, Jackson. But yeah. Something I want to share though. I mean, I am so excited. Anytime it's college football in Ireland, I am so excited for these games, and they do a great job promoting them too. I want to go to one of those Ireland games one of these days. But I'm going to share my screen and show this the great promotional job that Northwestern did with this. Like, I don't know if you can see this, Jackson, but you have a Nebraska and a Northwestern player running through the cliffs of Moore. This is probably the most beautiful piece of promotional college football art I've seen in my life. This made me want to buy tickets to Ireland. So this was in the program. This was in the virtual program of the 2021 Northwestern Illinois game at Wrigley Field, a game that I went to. And I saw that. I'm like, oh my gosh, give me my tickets to Ireland for Notre Dame Navy in 2023. Give me my flight tickets right now. So just a beautiful piece of art. And, I got to wonder where.
Superb Photoshop skills right there.
It's amazing. I gotta wonder where this great run ended. Did it end at the Barney Stone? Where did this great run end for this great player? But I'm gonna stop my share.
Looks like to me the corner 31 for Nebraska. It looks like he might have gotten beat, so I'm guessing a little toss to the outside, or maybe outside the tackles run at least. But yeah, wow, that's inspirational.
He may have been stopped outside some local pub or tavern out there in Dublin. That
possibly.
I kind of think where.
Yeah. Wow, I had missed that. That is something else. Man, we'll go ahead and go with our players to watch this week. Each of us have already gone over at least one with Quinn Williams for yourself, and I had Isaiah Connolly. I'm gonna go with TJ Young, the safety from Florida Atlantic. We talked a little bit earlier about Charlotte at Florida Atlantic and how that was one-sided, could be a little bit closer this year. I'm not expecting Young to slow down at all though, man. 112 career tackles, and 2 of his 3 interceptions last year were pick sixes, man. So look for it to maybe go the other way. So excited to see what Young can do, and definitely a potential NFL prospect coming out of FAU.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Florida Atlantic, I mean, and they had a strong defense, the past couple of years, I guess, like not a strong S defense, but you saw shades of greatness in their defense the past couple of years. With 2020, they allowed 17.4 points per game. This past year, they allowed 26 points per game. So definitely strong defenses coming out of FAU in Conference USA, and probably going to get stronger with some of those stronger teams, the stronger offenses, such as Marshall going to the Sun Belt. So my next player of the week, I talked a bit about Logan Bonner too. Definitely a household name to watch and a dark horse Heisman candidate, being a quarterback in the Mountain West. But I'll show some love for the running backs, like it's the 1990s. A Big Ten running back, like I'm talking about Ron Dane. But Chase Brown out of Illinois, and this guy quietly had a great year. If his workload was higher, I mean, this is definitely a guy we're talking about as a Heisman dark horse. But he only had 170 carries, and even then with 170 carries, he had 1,005 yards. So definitely an explosive playmaker at running back for the Fighting Illini. He could fall in the footsteps of other Brett Bielema backs like PJ Hill, Monte Ball. They run, they run a similar style of offense to, those Wisconsin teams, those strong Arkansas teams. Even in Arkansas too, they had great running back play. If you remember Alex Collins for the Razorbacks. So Chase Brown too. I expect that Wyoming Illinois game to be won in the trenches. in all honesty, for both Wyoming on offense and Illinois on offense. Chase Brown definitely a running back to watch out of the Big Ten because what's more Heisman like than a running back out of the Big Ten. So that's my player to watch. That's another one of my players to watch right there.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And if there's a conference that really has a history of producing great running backs, it's the Big Ten, right? I mean, you can go all the way back to Eddie George. You can do someone more modern like Jonathan Taylor, even go back to our childhood like Reggie Bush, So I'll go with little conference realignment joke. I'll go with my next guy, Dedrick Parsons, the running back from Hawaii. Omar, you might know him as the transfer from Howard from this past year. Get out your hardware bingo cards if you have it from when Omar posted it. If you can't catch, you can't play, Omar, as a running back. Man, he has 618 rushing yards, but 279 receiving yards last year, which is a ratio I love to see as a running back ball catching advocate. But man, he's getting the full-time starting role. I wouldn't be surprised if he hit it fast this year, man, because he's that good. He doesn't have to share the duties with anyone else. And he was only a few yards away from it if you count, all-purpose yards. So excited to see him against Vanderbilt.
Yeah, so I mean, we both remember last year Calvin Turner from Hawaii in that offense. Different offense, obviously, with Timmy Chang now coaching instead of Todd Graham. Thankfully, because Todd Graham almost did irreparable damage to that program. But it'll be interesting to see whether Dedrick Parsons takes that Calvin Turner role. Now, of course, he doesn't have the background of Calvin Turner, with Calvin Turner being a former triple option quarterback at Jacksonville. But Calvin Turner ran the ball a ton. He obviously caught a ton of passes for the Rainbow Warriors last year. So maybe Parsons takes that role of Calvin Turner, just being that sort of Swiss Army knife for that Hawaii offense. So I'm very intrigued to see how Timmy Chang uses them, which I guess in a run and shoot scheme, because I assume they're going back to the run and shoot. They have a tight end listed on their depth chart, but I assume it's going to be a soft transition to those run and shoot principles that we saw, of course, in the Colt Brennan days and with Nick Rolovich as coach a couple of years ago. So I'm excited for that. My last player to watch is, sorry, I got the wrong scroll in the Google document, but it's a kind of a combination player to watch. We have Trey Self and Xavier Gibson, the quarterback receiver tandem out of Stephen F. Austin. So Trey Self, starting with him, he had 3,200 yards and 28 touchdowns for the Lumberjacks last year. Can really sling the ball around. If you like offense, the WAC's known for having explosive offenses. That has not changed ever since they resurrected football. Stephen F. Austin is one of those explosive offenses. But I want to show some love to his receiver, Xavier Gibson, who had 1,367 yards and 13 touchdowns last season for the Lumberjacks. There has only been one receiver to win the Walter Payton Award. Jackson, do you know what that receiver is?
Walter Payton Award. I do not remember it off the top of my head. It's Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp. Okay, that's right. Yeah. I knew it was an NFL current great, but yeah, Kupp makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah, Cooper Kupp. So definitely someone to have on your draft radar as maybe a late round pick out of Stephen F. Austin. But those guys too, and that's a test. Like Jacksonville State is going to be a test for that program for that offense. And I expect them to be front runners for the Walter Payton Award if they have a huge game, if they both have a huge game out there in the Crampton Bowl. So.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I'm excited to watch that one. Man, it is a great slate, especially if you are equally into the NFL side of things. That night slate for preseason, if you have NFL Plus and can get the out-of-market ones, is also really great. So, man, a lot of football to be had on this week 0 of college football and week 3 of preseason. I'm excited to soak it all in, and man, it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I mean, even then, we already got bowl projections coming out. I guess these bowl projections will maybe take a little bit of shape after week 0. So that's what I'm excited about. And it's always great to have college football back. I mean, just get, it's just.
If you want to know what your Christmas and New Year's holiday week will not look like, just look at the bowl projections coming out right now. and then it's probably the exact opposite of what you'll actually be watching. So
exactly. Yeah. So it's bowl projections are always fluid. You know, starting with week 0 too. We'll see that with week 0. So I'm super excited. That's all I got, Jackson. You have anything else?
I'm good, man. I'm excited for a great week of college football.
Yep, me too. All right. So until next time, everyone, it's peace, love, and soul.